So hey there, I'd like to broach yet another difficult topic. I seem to be sort of a magnet to these things, and I don't know. Yeah, if you're vegetarian or vegan, this video is probably going to get under your skin, but I used to be vegetarian and vegan, and I wish that somebody would have made this video for me or presented a case like this, so I'm kind of trying to make it for not only vegetarians and vegans, but people that eat a standard American diet that feel guilty about eating meat. So let me tell you my backstory. I grew up in California on the coast in a very liberal culture, and during the time there was a big push for low fat and not eating meat, and so that was just kind of the general gist of diet over there. And California grows a lot of vegetables, so there's a lot of sort of pro-vegetable stuff with, eating your local food chain. So, but my parents would serve a lot of meat on the bone, and for some reason, I had a big aversion to eating meat in that way. Like, for whatever reason, I would have no issue eating hot dogs or hamburgers or something to that degree. But whenever it looked like an animal, I had a super hard time eating it, and I eventually found myself just not eating meat at all when I was younger, and just kind of naturally became a vegetarian off and on, with the occasional hamburger here and there. So that involved me eating a lot of carbohydrate sides as meals. They'd be serving chicken with the bones and rice, and I would just have 2 servings of rice. So that started the high carbohydrate habit that later turned into diabetes for me. But after childhood, I just kind of ate like a standard American diet. I would eat a lot of just random things that people eat, a little meat here and there, but nothing like I wouldn't eat ribs or chicken on the bone or anything like that, because that freaked me out. And I think when I was a child, what probably was the source of this sort of revulsion was we used to watch a lot of Disney movies, and one of the central themes of these Disney movies for children is compassion for animals. So in these movies, I'm sure you've seen them, but I'm just going to explain it for an audience that isn't Western, might be watching this. Usually they have animal helper friends, and there's a lot of themes about glorifying nature and things like that. And there's the concept that every character has animal friends that are helpful, and then there's like woodland creatures that just are just totally nice to each other. They don't eat each other. They don't they don't exhibit any wild behaviors. They're just like friendly, and they're just the nicest things ever, and you should be friends with them and not eat them. That would be terrible, because why would you eat such a nice little critter? And so I had a lot of that propaganda pumped in my head when I was young, and I think maybe that has something to do with it. But also the low fat, not eating meat culture is also another contributing factor. So later on, after many years of eating sort of a standard ignorant American diet, I started to develop type 2 diabetes, and I didn't really know that it was diabetes at the time, but I knew that I could not control my weight or my metabolism. Hang on, let me get a better angle here. And I was just getting progressively sicker as time went on. So, and there's some nature going wild up there. And I started reading about healthy diets and stuff, and that led me down the road of low salt, low fat, low cholesterol, and all that stuff. I tried that. I tried like that sort of idealistic American diet, eating the food pyramid, and it just made me sicker, and I had less energy, and I was just doing terrible. And then I tried the vegetarian diet because it was a big popular thing that a lot of people had suggested. And also I'd been on this fishing trip where my extended family was doing catch and release fishing, and so they would basically stick the hook in the water and pull up the fish. The fish would freak out, flop all over, be tortured. They'd take the hook out, and then they'd throw it back in the water, and that like really, really disturbed me, because it's like you're torturing this fish and giving it a piercing, and maybe it might not actually live that because it's like this giant hole and it might get an infection, who knows? And you're not even eating the animals, so what's the whole point of this? And that sort of pushed me in the direction of being a full-time vegetarian, because it's just like, this is just not necessary to cause undue suffering. And that was a really misguided experiment. My health gradually began to fall apart over the course of a year. I also had my girlfriend at the time was a vegetarian, so it was a lot easier to sort of give into that and sort of join her in her also misguided attempt at having better health. And I didn't really know any better at the time, so vegetarianism wasn't working. So I started reading about like vegan diets and started reading diet books and things like that, in an attempt to sort of get my health together. And the vegan diet really, I only lasted 6 months on that. I had the most brain fog and like low hormones, all the symptoms of that, and I was just terrible. I was cranky. I couldn't focus. It was horrific. And one day I eat an egg and I start feeling better. Like my brain starts coming back to me, and the next day I eat more eggs and I eat cheese, and I'm like, oh shit, like I'm feeling good. I obviously need things from animals to feel right. And so eventually I got off my moral high horse and quit that diet and found keto, which you've seen videos of me. It completely changed my life. I don't have type 2 diabetes anymore. Whenever I go and get looked at, they look at my blood sugar and A1C and all that stuff. It's like all my blood works just perfect. So I've been cured from a long list of ailments, and that worked. That has worked really well for me for the last 6 years. I feel totally happy with the diet. I have more energy than I did when I was in my 20s, and now I'm in my mid 30s. But the whole guilt of eating meat kind of remained with me. So for a long time, I kind of just continued to eat meat that was in a non-animal resembling shape. I would just eat steaks, ground burger, things like that, and I still had the revulsion to eating things on the bone. And it wasn't until recently that I had sort of a breakthrough of the fact that I was like pushing like these guilt feelings of gosh, I need to eat meat to be healthy, and I don't like it. I don't like the fact that my body's set up this way. But in talking to some people that eat an almost all meat diet, they call themselves zero carbers or carnivores. I learned a lot of interesting facts about how many animals die in vegetable agriculture versus hunting versus factory farms and stuff like that, which really changed my opinion about the whole guilt thing. So I sort of realized that 2 cows have enough calories in them for you to live an entire year off them. So in a optimal like very low number of death type diet, you can reduce your yearly kill count to 2 years, which is pretty impressive. And I figured that's really not much worse than vegetarianism or veganism, where you don't kill any animals to survive. But I actually started reading about agricultural practices and realized that there's actually a ton of wild animals that die during vegetable farming. Every single time that they roll machinery through like a field, you can expect thousands of critters to die, particularly like field mice, other critters we call vermin, that burrow in the ground. If you're a vegan, some vegans consider insects to be a sentient life that needs to be respected. So when you're using pesticides and herbicides and all sorts of stuff, you've got a World War II sort of kill count, for a single crop of corn or whatever. So not only are you killing all these insects and things like worms and species that live in the soil like bacteria and whatnot, you're also killing tons and tons of field mice. And so it's actually a real problem in farming. And in addition to that, when you prepare land for farming vegetables on it, you have to kill every single thing on that piece of land. So every little bit of animal habitat is removed so that you can grow your corn, so you can feel good about yourself because you're not killing animals. Well, you're essentially every single field where vegetables are grown is the remnants of ethnic cleansing or bio-cleansing. So and also if you want to look this up, harvesting certain fruits and vegetables results in the killing of millions of birds every single time they harvest. So worldwide we're talking about billions of birds that die for vegetables and grains and things like that. And so growing all this healthy vegetarian food that's cruelty free actually involves a lot of cruelty, except we live in these modern times where we don't really get to directly see that. Like maybe 3 or 2% of the United States are farmers. So how many people have experience with firsthand with what's going on in farms? It's only the people that live in the rural areas, and a lot of the people that are working in farms are immigrants. So us Western English speaking people, we don't really have much in the way of exposure of what actually goes on to make our food. So with that being said, I realized there's actually there's a case for being a pure carnivore being more compassionate to animals if you were to almost exclusively eat wild game or large game. And in the instance of wild game, here's an animal that got to live its life in its native habitat, eating its native diet, doing its native things that it does. And when you go and kill something like a deer, it suffers for maybe 30 seconds, a minute if you kill it right, like a good shot to the head. Whereas, in a factory farm, you've got a cow that's not eating its native diet. It's sick. You need to feed it antibiotics and treatments, and it has social issues because it's in a cage and all this stuff. And that's really terrible to make an animal suffer for the entirety of its life, right? Versus a shot to the head and that's it. That's the conclusion of your life. Apparently there's some animal freaking out over here, so I'm going to move this camera. But so I think factory farming is rather cruel as a practice, and I would agree with the vegetarians and vegans about that. But I don't think it's the only way to eat meat. So, and another interesting thing that I learned when I was researching, about how agriculture works is that things like this tree right here, these trees will eat animal and human remains. They're sort of, plant life is actually kind of like indirect carnivore, because everything that dies sort of eventually sinks into the ground and becomes fossilized, right? But the bones of animals leach calcium, and then trees like this one need that calcium. So if you were to look at pretty much any tree that's been grown near a grave, you will find that it's this is kind of gross, but its root system has found the human remains inside the coffins and busted through it and basically picked these bones clean, and all the sort of like rotting flesh that bacteria and fungi are helping decompose. It's eating the remaining nutrients. So essentially everything in life is feeding on itself and each other in a way, and there's just kind of like this circle of life thing going on where when I die, I'm going to hopefully be put in a coffin in the ground, and then my nutrients will get released back into the earth, hopefully. If not, maybe I would prefer a sky burial, but we'll see. But when I die, I'm made of nutrients that come from partially from plants, partially from animals, and then an animal or plant or worm or something gets to eat me. So essentially we're just taking turns recycling nutrients. So the cycle of life is it's really a thing, like all that stuff in The Lion King. It's a thing. And when you have sort of a vegetarian and vegan agriculture, the problem is that you need to use fertilizers from petroleum, because petroleum is the sort of compressed remains of tons and tons of animals and a bit of plant life as well, but the animals that have sort of sunken into the ground form these deposits of petroleum that we can refine into things like fertilizers and gasoline. And so when you're running a vegan agriculture system with no animals involved, no manure, you're going to need the dead remains of animals in petroleum form. So regardless of what you try to do, if you have some objection to throwing cow manure on your fields, well, you're using animal remains and animal products anyway. There's no escaping it. We haven't figured out a way to interrupt the chain of life. So as a human being, you are part of this chain. You are part of nature. We live this really unnatural life these days, and we're sort of disconnected from all this stuff. But that's the reality. You can't exactly change the nutrient cycle. So you can, the best case scenario for a very productive farm would be to have animals you're growing for meat and milk, and then vegetables you're growing on the side, and run the animals along the vegetable fields once you've done your cropping, and let them shit all over the place and return the nutrients of the grass that they've consumed back to the soil, so that you can grow more vegetables and complete the circle. So so as far as we go as human beings, if you look at our digestive system, we're a lot like dogs. We have a similar pH in our stomach acid as dogs, so we can digest a lot of the same nasty stuff we wanted to. And dogs, the variety of things that they eat, it's insane. And a dog is mostly a carnivore. I mean, it will eat, things like potatoes and rice and stuff, but a dog does best when it eats meat. And so after sort of learning these things about our biology and our food system, it really changed my perspective about vegetarianism and veganism. I realized it's not as moral as you would think it is. Not when there's an almost similar amount of animals dying to feed you vegetables, and you're not even getting all the nutrients in the animals that died. That's just senseless death. Admittedly, it does nourish the soil, but to have 1,000 dead field mice just decomposing on your field. But there's no death-free meal. There really isn't. You just get to sort of pick your poison as far as how you want to do it. So there's really no such thing as a vegetarian or vegan. And you can choose, what kind of fuel you want to put in your body. And after many years of doing a ketogenic diet, after learning these things, I've realized that, my guilt of being a meat eater just is completely unnecessary, and mostly the fault of people propagandizing me and everyone else. So I've sort of returned to eating, animal foods that are whole. So a whole chicken wing, and eating the cartilage off the end of the bone, pork ribs and just gnawing the meat off the ends of the bone, skin, cartilage, things like that. Things that human beings have been eating for millennia, longer than that, but forever, basically. Human beings usually eat nose to tail from an animal because it takes so much energy for you to go and hunt an animal that you better damn well take advantage of every calorie that your body can assimilate, right? So once I sort of dropped my guilt, I also dropped my aversion to eating whole meats. And you know what? There's something different about whole meats versus ground meat and processed meat. I feel so much better eating this stuff, and I don't know. I can't really explain it. There's probably nutrients in like the connective tissue and things like that really aren't highlighted or promoted as being nutritive, but the more whole meat I eat, the better. And I've actually been sort of going towards a fully carnivorous diet. The people the zero carbers, carnivore type people, convinced me that it would be a good idea to try. I thought it was crazy, but nowadays I eat sort of 90% meat, and I feel like it's an improvement over a regular ketogenic diet where you're eating 20 grams of carbs and then you just kind of eat random stuff. Nuts is usually a big thing you eat. But I feel the more meat I eat, the better I feel. The more my moods are leveled out, and you know that I'm a person with depression. So I have mental issues, but I just feel great eating this way, and I don't feel guilty at all. So I think that I'm really beginning to think that sort of a semi-carnivorous diet is more along the lines of what is biologically appropriate for human beings. When you look at our teeth, our canines, we have teeth that are designed for mashing foliage, but then also up here we have a lot of things for tearing meat. So obviously we're designed to eat both, and we can go either way. And some people, I'm sure, they do okay on vegetarian or vegan diets, but for me, my damn body loves meat. My body loves the flesh of dead things. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because I did not evolve. My species did not evolve so far to sort of fall back and eat like a diet like a cow or some other less intelligent animal that, it spends 100% of its day just grazing on leaves. Like we evolve big brains because we can get a lot of energy from things like meat, and we can rapidly assimilate all those nutrients and turn it into a big, powerful body and a big, super intelligent brain compared to, the rest of the species that inhabit this planet. It's almost disrespectful to yourself as a human being to not eat what is optimal for you, and it's just so funny that we get this backwards. If you're a vegetarian and vegan, you do fine. You don't have any health issues. You feel like you're thriving. Fine. I guess in your instance, I'm wrong. I'm speaking to the general public though, and I think that this applies to most people. I think most people are still a couple evolutions behind where our food system is. So things like processed food, a diet that includes a lot of wheat, a diet that is based on carbohydrates and vegetables is something a lot of us probably don't do very well on. So, I did the experiment. I tried it. I did horribly. I fell apart. I felt the most depressed in my whole life, and that really... I spent a lot of time in denial about my health because I really wanted to live what I thought was a more moral way. But, now that I look at it, I probably actually ended up killing more animals as a vegetarian and vegan than I do today, because I eat lots and lots of cow. I eat a decent amount of pig. I love pork ribs. They're freaking delicious. I don't eat a lot of chicken, shrimp, things like that, because that's a small animal, right? So if you're to feed yourself on chicken all year long, you're going to need to probably eat hundreds of chickens. So you're going to cause the suffering of hundreds of animals versus where you eat a cow. It's not a big deal. I mean, a cow has something like 500, 600 pounds of meat on it, and each pound is like 800 calories. I mean, it's a really good bargain as far as death per calorie, right? So, and that's what I'm concerned about. Like even though I call myself a carnivore, I'm still concerned with the welfare of animals. I think we should reduce suffering as much as possible, but we also need to be fed. And just like everything else in nature, other animals don't care about eating other animals. They don't have moral dilemmas about it. A tiger does not contemplate whether or not it's going to eat that rabbit. It's just a tiger. It's what it does. It's what it's designed to do. It's what it's evolved to do. That's its position in the food chain. And we also have a higher position in the food chain too, so you should respect your design as well, just as the tiger does. But yeah, so if you don't like this video, well, I'm sorry. I would really recommend that you sort of look into your own beliefs a little bit more, and I did, and this is where I ended up. A book that could really help you if you're sort of a recovering vegetarian or vegan is The Vegetarian Myth by Lear Keith. It's one of the best books, and it's really superbly written. I mean, it's one of those books where I just couldn't stop reading the damn thing, and it just, oh my gosh, it just kept blowing my mind. There's interviews with the author on YouTube. She's an ex-vegan, and used to be sort of almost like a radical or a militant vegan, very interested in the ethics aspect of it, and she started gardening and realized that her garden does best when you feed it the animal remains. So she found out that if she put cow manure on her little backyard crop, that it would just explode. It's just like, why is it? It didn't make sense to her. And then one of her plants had the calcium deficiency, and it wasn't producing as it should. And it was suggested to her that she add animal bone and blood supplement to it, and that freaked her out. But she eventually tried it, and the tree went back to health and started producing fruit again. And she just had this realization that this whole planet does not function without dying plants, dying animals, everything eating everything. It's this circle of life, and that she had a series of revelations that just so it was kind of a mindfuck moment for her, and the book is going to be a mindfuck for you as well. But I really recommend reading it, even if you're not an ex-vegetarian or vegan. You can. This is a case report of somebody who is vegan for decades, and all the health issues they had, and all the screwed up thinking that they had. And so if you have sort of like this revulsion to eating meat and this guilt of being what you are, read that book. So hopefully I help somebody, and I'm gonna make some bike videos, so I'll chat with you later. Bye.